What's up, guys? Welcome back to the THP Strength Podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. It is Mike Young, PhD. This person has mentored me since I was probably 17 years old officially, unofficially much longer, because I had read through every single article that he's ever posted on Elite Track and every single forum post that he was involved in on this website. So major influence on my coaching credentials, major influence on my life, major influence on Isaiah, even to some extent. You could even say that Isaiah, you're his grandson. If I'm going to be your son, Mike, which I know that you love those jokes. You may not know this as well. Mike hates anything that is sentimental, so I will be sure to include anything that is sentimental in this podcast. So a little bit of background as well for those that don't know. I did my first internship at Athletic Lab. Mike actually allowed me to come ahead of time, probably against his better judgment. Now looking back on that period of time. And I would essentially every day after he would finish his work day and he would do his lift, I would sit down with a pen and paper and I would just ask him questions. And we would just go through a series of things that had on my mind. And then he would give me homework. I'd go home. If you guys, you guys still have the internship program, right?
Yeah, going strong.
Going strong. So yeah, it was massively influential on my development, as I previously said, taught me most of what I know. So Mike, the first question I have for you is there anything, or coaching lineage, actually, I already asked you this first one. What was your coaching lineage? How did you get to where you are? I know that Boo played a really big role. I didn't know for sure about Dan, and if Ben and I were talking who influenced who, if Dan influenced Boo or Boo influenced Dan, or they worked together. We were kind of confused on that storyline.
Yeah, so I'd say my primary influence is Boo, but I've been lucky enough to have quite a few. So I truly mean lucky, because I GA'd, I transferred in as an athlete from Canisius College, small liberal arts school in New York, to Ohio University. I graduated, did a GA ship there, worked as both a track and a strength and conditioning coach in my GA. And as a head coach in strength and conditioning, I had a guy named Ethan Reeve, who has kind of become known to have created escalating density training, and had became the president of USTFCCCA, the CSCCA. So that's probably one of the largest strength coach organizations in the world. He was one of the founding members of that. So he was my first strength coach mentor. Then went on to do my PhD. Kind of long story short there, I worked for a guy named Boo Schexnayder, who every single day I'd go out and if I had anything at all that I would claim to be similar to you, John, is that I would go out to practice and take notes every day, and I'd come back home and come back to my office at LSU and write down the Booisms and his little witty jokes and cues and everything else. And also while I was there at LSU, I had a PhD professor, not really known in our field, but is a biomechanics guy, and he taught me more than I could ever imagine about critical thinking and about how to be both critical minded, but also open minded to exploring new ideas. So, and then where Dan fits into the equation is that as a guy who was at LSU at the time, Dan was at Texas and subsequently University of Florida. He influenced Boo, and I was then connected to Dan via that connection, as well as Lauren Seagrave. So those are two coaching legends of track and field. Like if you look at a lot of the influence in track and field, it comes from that era. Boo, Dan, Lauren Seagrave, just punching way above their weight, both in terms of the athletes they produce as well as the coaches that they have produced. So Dan, even before I really knew him, started to, I hadn't even really spent any time with the guy, to be honest with you. Crossed some emails and calls, and the guy was super gracious there, but he was almost based off of some of the work I had done for USA Track and Field and the recommendations of Boo, opening doors for me left and right, getting me job interviews, connecting me with people. So Dan was by far more of an external influence, not a day-to-day kind of guy. certainly influenced me a lot, both directly and indirectly through Boo. But I'd say Coach Ethan Reeve at Ohio University, who later went on to a handful of other things, including Wake Forest and Tennessee. And
did he lecture at one of the ALT or athletic lab? I think I met him. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, that name sounds really familiar.
And Boo and my major academic professor, Lee, who taught me how to be critical minded and basically get through the BS.
Sift through the shit. Well, my coaching, what's funny that you say that is my biggest mentors obviously being you, and then Dan going back to, for those of you that don't know, I did an internship at Altus, and I had asked Mike, most of the experience that I had, I would filter what I was going to do through Mike as a system to figure out what was worth my time and what wasn't. One of those things was to go work with Dan in 2016, the summer before the Olympic Games. So went over there, got to spend a lot of time with Dan. I know, Ben, you're currently taking the Altus courses, so you're pretty well accustomed to some of the stuff he teaches and stuff like that, and he's absolutely brilliant. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to add someone to study on your list that isn't us, then go check out Dan Pfaff, because he's one of the GOATs for sure. And then obviously, being in a roundabout way influenced pretty heavily by Boo, because you're like his little clone. And maybe this is another question I had. Where do you guys differ more, or where do you think you differ in relation to how Boo coaches jumpers? And my, I guess, experience with this is when speaking to Eric, because Eric was heavily influenced by Kilgore at Westchester. He said that Boo and Jason would do the most plows out of the three of you. You would probably do the least, and Boo would fall somewhere in the middle. And maybe that's changed, but that was probably 10 years ago that I asked him that question. So where do you guys differ, you and Boo, now?
I'd say from a training standpoint, it's pretty minimally. I definitely am kind of a Boo version 2, I would say. Like if Boo had the luxury of being born a generation or two later and, had access to things like VBT and force platforms and the sports tech and the load management stuff that I do, then I think he would have used that a little bit more than he does. I tend to like to use sports tech when I can. It's not, it will never replace that for me, but Boo is admittedly a Luddite when it comes to sports tech. He doesn't really rely on it or need it, and he's proven you can get the results without it. So in terms of the actual training difference, it's quite little. And it's interesting you say about the plyometric volumes and densities. I'd say my plyometric volumes, especially as you have probably seen, largely differ from Boo's, because Boo is getting grade A talent in terms of jumping abilities, I think. And I'm oftentimes getting, my biggest successes, Eric included, are Division II, Division III castaways. They're not guys who were going to LSU. They're guys who were told to hang it up after, their senior year in college, because they weren't even Division III All-Americans. And this is back at a time when Division III All-American meant you were way far off Division I. Nowadays, it's kind of close. But back then, Division III was kind of like you were a good high school or a very good level high school, like national class high school person. So, the level of talent that I was getting was lower than what you'd see in terms of what Boo would get. And even I coached at West Point for some time, and it was lower still there. Like there, you just have grinders, guys that are just going to pound away. And they couldn't take the plyometric volume. I actually tried to do some of the plyometric volume and the sprint volume that I was doing at LSU with guys at West Point, and they couldn't manage it. They just get beat to crap. But those guys, you put them in the weight room, and they were fine squatting 2 or 3 times a week, really heavy. And for whatever reason, they responded well to that. But if you gave them the jumping and sprint volume, it was just beat them up, and they couldn't perform. And that was kind of the start of when I started to look at things instead of these nice clean buckets, like here's your sprint volume and here's your strength volume and here's your plyo volume. They're really there. I just kind of view them as the same thing. and you can take some out of one bucket and put it into the other if you need to, and vice versa. As long as you're kind of have a little bit in every bucket, you're probably okay. And different people are going to need different ratios to reach their genetic potential. If you got a donkey who can just grind and work, and I don't mean that like in any bad way, but it's like a guy that can go to work. They're a workhorse. They can go to work. How you handle that is going to be a little different than how you treat it as a racehorse. You got a racehorse, now it's, you got to treat it right all the time. You can't hammer away at the slow grinding strength stuff. And maybe the volume doesn't need to be as high. So some of, I think, our differences in terms of the plyo volume or, the sprint volume that you might see between my programs and Lauren's programs would be due to the level of athletes that I've had. And I've had a lot of success with these D2, D3 guys. We almost made a career as a track coach, turning D2 and D3 guys into national champions, like very high level, especially in the multi events, some triple jumpers who've won national championships, guys that have gone to compete in the high jump, and even some sprinters that have gone on. And all of them are my best guys. A couple national champions are all D2, D3 guys. And, it's the idea that I'll tell them when they first come in is, hey, look, you are way far behind your competition. You think you want to compete at USAs? Well, there's already 30 collegiates that have the national qualifier in your event from Division I that are the same age or younger than you. So if you want to catch up to them or maybe exceed them, you have to be willing to do things that they're not doing, because you have to be the best at getting better. Because if you want to catch up, you can't just improve at the rate that they're improving. You have to be the best at getting better. And that's the only way you narrow that gap between you and these guys that are, coming from your LSUs and your UTs and your University of Floridas and your UCLAs. Is like, these are, Wagyu grade A beef talent. And it's like, guys
you racehorses out there. I mean, are we going to keep making these illustrations?
I mean, it's like,
would you say when looking at a talented athlete versus a not so talented athlete, would you say that for the talented guys, they can't handle as much of the weight room volume, or is it more of like a mental thing with them?
I think the guys that are really wired for fast elasticity, that's naturally wired like that, whatever you want to define that as, they're just super elastic, they're super bouncy, they're, maybe don't have great natural qualities in the weight room, but they can jump through the roof. Those are the guys that I think, are a little bit more neural drive. They're going to benefit from getting strong, but they're probably going to maybe reach a limiting return a little bit earlier. And the guys that don't have those qualities, improve what they're good at. They're not going to get as beat up from the weight room. They'll be able to handle that slow grinding strength. You put them on the track where they've got to handle these elastic loads, 5 times body weight loads on sprints, 10 times on jumps, just can't handle it. I've seen it many times over. I don't know what the full etiology of it is, but it's like, I see it all the time with guys that, especially in your really, really ballistic events, like sprinting, like the horizontal jumps. Vertical jumps are a little bit different. You guys, of course, know about that, but you see guys coming at it from both sides in the horizontal jumps and different jumping strategies there. But I know you guys do a lot of the more traditional weight room work, and I think that's a great spokesman for that methodology of training. And I think getting strong never hurts. It's always strikes me as a stupid question of like, how strong do you need to be, or how, when be as strong as you can. Of course, if you're taking away from other aspects of training, not recovering from it or whatever, then sure, shift your bias. But getting strong is important.
Do you think that some of these, like we see a few guys in our space that have insane verticals. They had never touched a weight room their entire life. You see it in track sometimes. Guys will run, in high school, you'll see these 990 guys now or low tens and stuff like that. They've never touched a weight in their entire life, right? And then they'll chalk it up as, oh, look at me. I don't need to touch weights, so you don't need to touch weights, or you'll see guys in our space that jump every day when they're kids. And then, they've got naturally good jump technique. They jump really, really high, especially 2-foot jumpers. I think they can handle it more because the forces are lower than what you would see in like high jump or long jump in terms of peak forces. Like I was telling Ben the other day, I was like, well, the big difference in the progressions in track with what like Mike or Boo would do is they're going to do a lot more of a buildup for example, like long jump takeoffs or something like that, right? Like you're going to go do your short approach jumps. You're going to do your, probably not brick top, but the standing bound series where it's, standing long jump and then standing triple jump, double, stuff like that. Then you're going to build into the short approach jumps. Then you do approaches and then you do full approach jumps, usually in competition. Whereas like as dunking athletes or people that only dunk or only turn vertical jump, they're doing 3-hour sessions, almost every day as a kid, jumping every single day. And I guess my question to you is, what do you think the sorts of changes, maybe from, you use the word etiology point of view. I don't know if you would, or perspective. I don't know if you would have the lens on that per se, but do you think that it's just that they learn those motor patterns so effectively? Do you think someone like Isaiah who did that, he's grooved it so many times and just has like better adaptations of the tendon because he's younger? Like, how would you attribute that, their success in jumping as someone who only jumped, to their progress or progression, I guess?
Right. I mean, you think you can see that to some extent in every sport. It's most interesting when you look at your physical performance oriented sports, your jumping, your sprinting. And I think that if you stop thinking of it as these sprinting in one bucket and jumping in another bucket and weights in another bucket, and you start just thinking of them as stimulus on a continuum, a neurological continuum, that there's a little bit of a sliding scale, and everybody's slightly unique, not completely unique, but slightly unique, and different things will work for different people, different tendon lengths, different tendon composition, different fiber types, different technique, different neural drive. So it's just figuring out what matters for each person. And there's plenty of stories. I actually talk about this a lot in terms of sprinting, a little bit less so in terms of jumping. But I mean, there's some classic examples that are really just kind of straw men when you dive deeper of exactly what you're talking about. You're pointing out the one outlier, or maybe a dozen outliers, whatever it is, and all they've done is jump. Or Carl Lewis, the greatest sprinter of all time. If you've ever looked at his weight room program, it's like really shitty light leg extensions, on a Nautilus machine, stuff like that.
Awesome. That's what we need.
And the guy's not
some
only
Usain Bolt cleans.
Or yeah, you look at Usain Bolt. I have a presentation. I've got Usain Bolt on there cleaning, and he's doing 135 pounds, 10 reps. With what looks like a catch, doesn't even get the elbows around. It's mostly just lower back extension, and you're like
cleans, reverse caterpillar.
Yeah, so it's not good technique. It's not good load. It's not a significant load. It's 135 pounds. It's poor prescription at 3 times 10 or on a power clean, something like this, right? So you're basically missing every box in terms of what you would expect to see. But then you dive a little bit deeper and you go, oh, well, he sprinted a shitload. What did Carl Lewis do? He sprinted a shitload and he did long jump, right? So there's you're already throwing in the plyometrics. And even the guys who are like tempo guys in the sprint world, there are tempo guys, and they say, oh, you don't need to sprint. And guys like, Bobby Kersey is a good example. He has a very I don't want to distill his successful methodology down, but he does a lot of slower, longer tempo running. I've seen some programs where they're doing like really long hill runs for short hurdlers, and people of my school of thought would go, oh, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, that tempo run at 80% is reasonably close to sprinting. It's the same basic action as sprinting. And because it's at 80%, you can do a shitload of volume at it. Once you get closer to the edge, you're 95%, you're 100%. Well, now you can't do nearly as much. So again, it's, I think there's no denying that an all jumps program could work. An all sprint program or even an all tempo program could work to make you faster. Especially if we're talking about sprinting to sprint or tempo to sprint, or, you saw the guys at Altus were doing a lot of kind of sub-maximal running, right? Even their sprinters would do sub-maximal running, at least by my definition. And the jump, if you're doing a lot of jumping, it's certainly going to improve your jumping, even if it's, sub-maximal. You can't beat specificity, I think.
So it's almost like you take it through the lens. And I've said this before. We're working on a project right now where we're talking a lot about strength, and you can ask Isaiah because he read through what I wrote. And I basically said strength is, I think the word you always say, it's like a contrived like point of view, because it's force. It's just force going through the muscle and through the tendon. And if you've got a lot of force going through the muscle and the tendon and you're doing a lot of times, you're going to improve that muscle's ability to generate force. It's not like, oh, because I'm doing a squat versus running, there's no force going through. I'm not generating force. I'm not generating tension. And even if you were to look at something like jogging, I think jogging, you still hit 3 times body weight or something like that. Like, if you were to put, if you were to put like 3 times body weight on the bar and do quarter squats with one leg, it's going to be pretty fucking hard. But and so like, if you go out and you do a bunch of jumping, you are like, let's just call strength anytime we're loading the muscle with, like, if you're on a force plate, you're generating newtons, right? Or there's newtons on the force, it's measuring newtons. Okay, we're going to see a lot of newtons a lot of times. And so you're doing something that is, and if you're increasing the velocity, we know you need an acceleration to do that. You need net force. So you have to generate force in all of those activities. It's like saying, no, really what you're trying to do is say that they went out and did something where there was no force, like sitting in a rocking chair. It's like, that truly is no force. That's not going to make you better. But if you go out and you do the jumps and you do the running and you do all these other activities and you do have a progression built in, like let's say that you're starting with, when I was at Athletic Lab, I always say swimming to jumping, right? It's like, as long as there's a progression there where you're getting to jumping at some point, you're still following progressive overload. You're still following maybe individuality. You're still getting more specific in some ways. And even if it's these guys are only running tempo and they're competing, they're still going to get really intense sprint stimuli from just competing. And so I think, it's a really, really interesting point. And it's kind of confirms what a little bit of confirmation bias, just seeking for the answer that I want. So I think I have a whole list of questions here. I think another good one that you alluded to or mentioned that this is kind of heading that direction is, what is your favorite current sports tech that you like? If you had to pick one for jumping higher, you'd say this is the one. It's VBT, it's a force plate, it's the new Beyond Power. What is the one piece of sport tech that you think is underutilized and incredibly effective in improving performance?
It's really tough to name one. I've got a couple favorites off the top of my head. We love our Beyond Power. We use Output pretty extensively for testing, and some force plates from Vald, I'd say, as an assessment, as an overall assessment metric. In training, it's probably Output. Output is great for training as well as assessments. It's super easy.
Output's the name of the tech, right?
Yep.
What is? I've never even heard of that. What is that?
It's a sensor. You can place it on a barbell. You can place it on your foot. You can place it on a waistband. It's similar to it's an accelerometer with a gyroscope in it. So
it's like push band,
like push, but much better. Yes, it's much more accurate, much more reliable. It has more versatility to it as well, because you can use it on your body, you can use it on the bar, it can handle angular movements. You could actually test an RSI. We've done RSI tests with a laser contact grid, on a forest platform with a output device on the foot. And the forest platform is a gold standard for jump height and contact times. And the 3 devices are all very much in line with each other for jump height and contact times, which is exactly what you'd want to see. A lot of companies promise that, but they don't always deliver. So we will oftentimes use the output device interchangeably for some jump metrics. You're obviously not going to get all of the jump metrics that you want out of a accelerometer based device, but you can certainly get things like RSI and all versions of RSI, 10.5 and max RSI and the Scandinavian test, and you can get jump height, and you can do drop jumps and rebound tests and everything else. You can do a single leg variant. So it's has a lot of benefit, and we use it on barbell lifts, specifically like a squat and some pulls.
It's kind of taking the place of a lot of the VBT stuff that you were doing. That's the VBT device that you would prefer to use, because you used to be able to do that with push as well. It just wasn't as reliable whenever I was there.
Is this device beyond, like, is it by Beyond Power, or are they the same thing?
Totally separate. So Beyond Power is another device which I love. It's like, man, I feel like I think I was maybe the first person in the US to get it.
You were also the first person to be interviewed by that one brand that you wear on your wrist that I don't know if I can disclose.
On my wrist.
A lot of people use them. They give you HRV, they give you recovery rate.
Not this company. This is Apple. So no, they never. That would be. I think you're speaking of Whoop. That was a long time ago.
I know. I was there. for that one.
Yeah, that was.
I forgot about Whoop. I used it for like a couple months.
Yeah, Mike always somehow finagles himself into a position where he gets on these like calls with people, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we want to test out this new sports tech. It's really cool." And Mike will sit on the call. I've seen him. I can't disclose the full thing, but he'll just be like, he'll look at me and be like, "It's fucking horrible." He'll mute himself and be like, "Oh, what the fuck are they talking? This is so bad." So he always has a really good filter, which is why I wanted to ask you. This is Beyond Power, by the way. So I think it is more or less taking the place of force plates, because it can give you almost immediate RFD. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also potentially 1080.
But so it's more similar to the 1080 device. I use it. I think you asked me a question about iso-inertial. You can do iso-inertial and way more with the Beyond Power. So I really love your non-traditional resistance formats. In particular, we use eccentric. Again, I think we were the first in the US to get eccentric. They saw some of the crazy ass shit that I was doing to get accentuated eccentric overload, and they were like,
"We still do that."
Looking at it and going like, "Hey, what the fuck is this guy? He's going to kill somebody." And
we still do it.
That's viral video. This John trying to kill me.
Have you seen the videos of Isaiah doing the front squat overloads at the 24-hour?
So they're like, "Oh, they'll send me a couple boxes, save a couple lives." So that's how I started working with eccentric. And then they're not exactly interchangeable. They have different uses. I progress them a little bit differently, but I love overloaded eccentric a lot. And both of the devices make it very easy and safe to do, which back 20-ish years ago was not the case. I mean, you could get overloaded eccentrics through some kind of less known things like weight releasers, or maybe some specialized equipment, or maybe special use cases of 2 up, 1 down, or strong weak type methodologies. But actual technology and equipment that you could use to implement it was few and far between. I believe Muscle Labs maybe had some things that you could maybe do it, but and 1080 kind of has some devices that do it. But what Beyond Power has done is made it a little bit more approachable in price. Still expensive, of course. And then same thing with the flywheel devices that are out there, with my favorite being the K-Box, probably being the one we use the most. Great way of getting iso-inertial resistance, or accentuated eccentric overload, or even doing high speed, non-momentum based momentumless velocity type training like you could do with a Kaiser. You could do things like, can't quite mimic pneumatic training, but you could mimic using chains, using bands, using reverse chains. You can fully control the eccentric overload, which is something that you can't do with most devices. So there's a lot of utility in it. And I think both of them, as well as the output device, all have the benefit of providing instantaneous feedback, which helps to drive intent. And even the best programs in the world will benefit from instantaneous feedback that drives intent. I've always kind of joked around that if I could create an app with an invisible bar sensor, aka invisible, a fake bar sensor that didn't even provide any data, and the app is just a random number generator that force people to move faster, you see fantastic benefits, because there's so much evidence to suggest that, if an athlete feels like they should push harder or are in competition with somebody or themselves, that you'll see better results. And when people talk about transfer of training, that's one of the ways you get transfer of training is you just drive intent. Mm-hmm. The gains are really in the margins of intent. You put 85% on the bar, you could give 85%. But if you give 100% with 85% on the bar, that's where the gains are. So that what the VBT or the output device or the K meter does is it provides that instantaneous feedback that makes you just push a little bit harder. And it lets you know, and it lets other people know, and it provides a level of accountability that just isn't there with just traditional mass-based lifting. Until you get up to those max percentages, you get to 95%, the barbell will provide all the accountability that you need. But if you're at 80%,
you're smashed.
Right? Yeah. If you don't give 95% and 95% on the barbell, you're smashed. But if you don't 80%, now you got a pretty big margin for error. And if you're training for explosive power, it becomes really important that you're able to move those light to moderately heavy loads very fast. And that's actually we've kind of shifted away from using, I think probably when you were around, John, we were doing like maybe our squats up to 95%, even during competition cycles. And now we've kind of shifted away from that. We do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in rep scheme using the VBT. The 80% is at 2. The 85% is at 1, and then we'll just see what that looks like over time. So we might not even be testing over a 12-week period, but we're expecting to see the 80% and expecting to see the 85% move faster. And I've had guys, some of whom Devin was great at this, Devin Cornelius, but a handful of guys, including some great long jumpers that I had recently. Josh Coley, he's like an 8-meter long jumper. Jumped 8 meters last year. He could move 85%, like almost 0.8 meters per second on a barbell.
That average or peak?
That's average. So 0.8 meters.
Crap.
Yeah, it wasn't quite. It was like 0.75. So incredibly fast. Yeah. So, but we did
he's
that
strong. So you had some big weight on the bar.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean the group that I'm talking about, that Josh was a part of was 15 deep, 15 guys. The strongest guy could squat 3.2 times his body weight.
Is that Greg?
Greg, absolute monster. Yeah. And then we had a couple guys that the group average, I think, was like 2.6. And it was even like I'm taking the foot off the gas on strength, and we just shifted it more and more. And even since that group, which is largely dissolved now, I've got a much, much smaller group. We've gone even more so towards that 80, much more emphasis on the 80, 85%. And I got one guy who's still very, very strong. We've gone even less so. So can you move this 75 to 80% loads very, very fast rather than worry about pushing the needle and getting that 95%, a fraction of a meter per second higher.
Snap City.
So this is a follow-up question, because one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen with using VBT is it mega fatigues guys. We've done the same thing you have actually with Isaiah and a few other guys where, we had a in-house little, case study where we put the same loads on the bar for 3 weeks and it was power cleans. And we said, okay, what peak wattages are you going to hit? What peak velos are you going to hit? Are you getting better at the loads that you previously were bad at? Are you getting worse at those loads? How are those metrics happening? Are you pulling the bar higher and the total displacement's higher, but your peak power is lower, your peak velo is lower? Sometimes you can see the peak power go up, but the peak velo won't be because the displacement is higher on the OVR. At least I think they've changed the equation a little bit now, but you used to be able to see that, which was a little bit confusing at the time. And we saw that as we focused on those things, they got better. So like Isaiah, came in, his ground contacts were really long, his rate of force development eccentrically, concentrically was lacking. We said, okay, we know you're really strong. You just squatted 200 kilos. You've cleaned 140 kilos, I think. Is that right, Isaiah, in kilos?
Yeah. Just below 150. It was 325.
So like super crazy metrics on the far end of the slow concentric side of things. And we said, okay, but we need to focus more on the faster side of things. So we've done those things. But what I'd previously seen using it a lot was that it fatigued guys massively using the VBT, and it would take away from, like you said, like you're pulling out of one bucket and putting it into another. And so my question is, how long and how do you balance those things? Have you seen the same thing?
Yes, in a different area. So we use VBT pretty sparingly. I've actually moved completely away from using it on Olympic lifts. I'll use it on pull variants, but not on Olympic lifts. And that's something you alluded to, is that, a power clean is one of the few lifts that isn't defined by range of motion, really, right? You could catch a power clean anywhere from legs fully extended. Like say you use 50, 60%, you just catch that, you rip it and grip it, that thing's caught with legs fully extended. Or you could do a power clean max and you're catching it at 90% or 90-degree knee angle. Both are technically a power clean, but one has a shorter pull, way shorter pull, and probably a way lower velocity. And the 50% one that you're catching with legs fully extended has a much higher velocity, almost certainly a higher power output. And so we started, because of that discrepancy or that variability inherent within the definition of the lift, we stopped using it for the full lifts with a catch. We'll only use it for pull variants, like a clean pull, not a panda pull, not a high pull. I think you could probably do it to a high pull if you said, this is the end point, right? You defined what the end point is. And you don't panda pull it and kind of duck under. All great lifts, panda pull's fine, power clean's fine. We use them, but VBT kind of just gives very misleading understanding of what you're seeing there. We use it almost exclusively. Multis will use it on a bench press, multi-eventers, decathletes, etc. We'll use it on squats. We'll use it on pulls, and that's about it, to be honest. But where I've seen, and even there, it's pretty sparingly, probably like max of 4 sets per week. Where I have seen the phenomenon that you're talking about is in sprinting. So there was a while there that I was trying to auto-regulate sprinting. And what we would do and I still do it a little bit, but I'd pull out timing gates every day on the track. And this is, again, at the height of my group, is 14 guys deep. The context is it's COVID time. These guys aren't competing. We don't know when our next competition was. They're all like high T, going at it, men. They're all kind of fighting to make a national team or something like that. I think that year we had 3 guys make a Team USA in the decathlon in Thorpe Cup, and one lady. And so we got the timing gates out, and we're just doing fly 10s. And I'm saying, hey, we're gonna run 5 to 8 of these 5 flying 10s. 40-meter run-in. Yeah, a 40-meter run-in. And I'm going to shut it down when I see a decrement of, let's say, 3%, right? That's a little bit outside of the variability that you might see sprint to sprint, 2.5%.
They're all time or just based off on the day?
So on the day. So if you, and if they improve, then they reset. You know what I mean? It'll cap at 8. You're never going to do more than 8. You're never going to do less than 5, and that's kind of a concept somewhat coming from the sport of weightlifting, where they talk about daily minimums or daily maximums, and in terms of volume. And then what you got, so we'd have the people, the athletes go through, and they're basically all turning it into a track meet every single day. And the guys would just get absolutely blistered. So we had to take it out.
Yeah. That's like me going out and being like, all right, guys, we're going to do vertical jump today. Vertical jump test. Guys
well,
are pulling their
intent, the intent was like that we're going to, I'm going to be able to quantify their neurological fatigue rep for rep and be able to pull them when the fatigue gets too high.
How long did it take?
I mean, it would be so that they were just going after it for all the reps. Like it was just turning into a race. Everybody was trying to race every single time. And, we were just during that 2-year stretch of COVID, we were doing a lot of kind of experimental, kind of crazy stuff. We were combining that with what the guys would call a slingshot, where we pull together a couple bands together and basically just cheat code the full acceleration phase. So we were getting like pretty much a full 20-meter fly at top speed. And what I would even do was it got to be so crazy that I wasn't even using a 10-meter because guys would hone in on it and say, hey, I know I can run a 0.95 or a 0.93, and I just want to beat the 0.93 every single time. Or I want to beat my man's 0.98. So instead, what I did was I would just throw out the timing gates at arbitrary distance, somewhere, but I wouldn't even measure it, somewhere between 11 or 9 and 12 meters. And then that brought it down a little bit because now you're not competing against your PR. So you're just, that it's
beat the day.
Beat the day. That's right. But even then it was still too much to use regularly. So now we'll use it like once a cycle because the intensity is so high. And you guys,
how much of the drop
it's
off?
like a training group.
Yeah. How much of the drop off would you see? Like, how long did it take before you'd see like these guys are like? I mean, you'd have to see it other places. Like their squat, they're clean. They come back into the sprint session. Like it had to be like 1 or 2 sessions before these guys are crushed. There's no way they made it through a 3-week loading period, right?
Yeah, it would depend on the guy, but it was almost inevitable that something was going to fail, whether it was like a small injury or training syndrome. It was just
what is wrong with you? This is the shit. People look at me and they say, John, you bury guys. I'm like, I learned from the best. I learned from the guy that took the most intense stimulus and said, you're going to do 10 of these and you're going to go until your hamstring falls off the fucking bone. Like, this is why I don't have a lot of empathy for guys. Now, Isaiah, I hope that this creates some perspective of why I'm like, you'll be fine just doing that one. I've since changed a little bit. Okay. I've changed my ways. I've gotten away from it because we would see injuries.
I've gotten soft. You've gotten soft.
I've gotten soft in my old age. I've gone soft. It's because you laugh about it. You're like, this is funny. I've got to be friends with these people. You just go home to your wife and kid and you're good to go. I've got to deal with the text messages afterwards. Like, I pulled my hamstring. I pulled my quad. I'm like, well, it was a fun experiment. I got to see what didn't work. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Okay, we're gonna pivot here because we're at 40 minutes and I have some other fun questions that I wanted to ask. One, actually, before I do that, I did want to ask because it's semi-related. You work with a lot of NBA guys. First, can you disclose quickly who those are or no?
Yes
or no question. Yes or no question.
Not blanketly all of them, but I could mention a couple names. I think right in the league right now, I have 2 guys, of which I can probably speak of one.
Okay.
And I've not had a ton of them, but I've had 11 guys over the last 5 years. It's really picked up in the past 5 years. They're all regulars. Not only a couple of them are bigger names. Caleb Martin, kind of almost won East Coast Eastern Conference MVP a couple years back. TJ Warren, who was bubble MVP. Jay Huff, who is kind of now getting quite a bit of recognition for his reverse dunk skill package.
Right?
Is that the tall? Yeah. He's like a tall center,
white guy from Indiana. Yeah,
he dunks backwards all the time.
All the time, basically unnecessarily all the time. Yeah. So I've worked with those guys for 4+ years. I've had guys that have floated in and out of the league as well. guys that are still playing, but maybe now they're in China or now they're in
All right,
Korea.
we get it. You're a big fucking deal. All right. So, all right, the question that we had is, do you have some stories about managing them in season versus off season, and the type of things that pop up that you see in season, how much you can train versus off season, how much they can train?
And for context, the reason this is actually my question, because we ran a poll on the guys we train, and it's like almost half our guys are basketball, the other half are volleyball, but we have a lot of guys signing up basically to train, whether in season or off season, specifically to jump higher. So I figure it'd be cool to ask you, who are training, at the most elite level, these guys, what you've seen from them.
So, full disclosure, I barely train them in season. I have them almost exclusively in their off season. I will sometimes work with their team coach a little bit, and then I will see them on breaks. So like all-star break, I'll see them for maybe 2-3 sessions if they want to come home. But then it's in the NBA, if you don't make the playoffs or you're eliminated early, you've got a pretty long break. You've got 4, maybe 5 months break. I don't know. Teams are making you report a little bit earlier and earlier each year, but generally speaking, I have guys for about 4 months in the off season, and then very sporadically and almost like on a consultancy basis in season. And I don't really have a lot of control over what they do in season. Most guys of the level that I'm working with, they work with the team staff. If you got a LeBron, he's got his own guy, and his own guy is on staff. Not a lot of guys have that. There are some that do, but not a lot. So that's just full disclosure. I don't want to claim to be an expert of in-season management for these NBA guys. But off-season, I do have the luxury of training them for extended periods of time. So we can follow a planned progression that probably is pretty similar to what you guys do. In season, I know that a lot of the stuff that we do in the off season just isn't possible. So when I do write some programs for the guys that are overseas, and maybe they have a little bit more freedom to do what I ask them to do, and there we're removing most of the higher intensity plyometrics for them.
That's what you're doing, or that's what they're...
I'm doing that.
Okay.
Really what I'm trying to do in season, and this is true for any sport, whether it's basketball or track and field or, soccer, I work a lot in soccer, is that I'm trying to fill the gaps of what is not covered as a stimulus elsewhere in their sport. So the basketball guys, they're jumping, they're changing direction. They're even, maybe they're not sprinting, but they're running. So what am I doing? Well, they're probably not doing any squats. That's right. They're not doing any heavy loaded strength work, and they're not doing any, probably the low intensity extensive plyometric work that is pretty good has a high reward for recovery and tendon health and low potential negative effect, right? So if you do the high intensity plyometrics, has a high risk and a high reward that maybe is not worth it, and you don't have to check that box when they're in season because they're already pretty smashed. But if what they're not seeing for sure is heavily loaded, slow grinding work. So I might prescribe that a little bit more. We might almost go reverse specificity in terms of the weight room.
So specific everywhere else.
So specific elsewhere, everywhere.
General.
Yep.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And this is all in season?
That's in season.
In season, yeah.
How does what do you focus on in the off season? And I'm specifically curious too about how much like skill work and on court time these guys are getting on top of the off season workouts.
So all my guys, and I don't know that this is true for everyone, but all my guys are great professionals. They, and that's probably the case with anyone that is actually seeking out a coach. They're doing it on their own volition. So I do get a filtered landscape of that, but they're also doing skill work on a pretty much daily basis. In fact, sometimes I'm I'm scheduled before or after their skill work. That's a very, very common format for my guys, at least. Again, that's a small sample size. I don't know how true that is around the league. I've heard the stories. They show up in the media every now and then of, I think Anthony Davis 2 years ago said he didn't even touch a basketball, something like that.
I think Ray Allen had like a story about that. Like he didn't touch a ball all off season. That was like, I didn't even lose my, like,
I mean, there's a handful of guys. Right.
Right.
And there's certainly for sure guys that don't step foot in the weight room also. I mean,
probably a lot more of those, I would imagine.
No, that's right. That's right. It is going away a little bit, but I think that in the off season, I haven't looked at your full-on programming, but I would guess my off season when I have 4 months probably looks a little similar to what you guys sell as your package deals, where it's a planned progression over time. We're starting with a kind of what in track and field would be your general prep type stuff. By the end of it, we are getting into some of the more sexy stuff, but we start really, really basic. The stuff that, is just boring as shit, but serves as a foundation. They probably
write that down, Isaiah. Write that down, Isaiah.
He is. I literally call it that, the boring stuff. I have the boring stuff and then I have the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is the fun stuff isn't even that fun. It's like, we put a pause in with our pain clean.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, dude, you got to power clean like a lot. I'm sorry. You got to do slow squats for your tendons. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You got to do that stuff. But so it's really interesting that it's not too dissimilar. I kind of was curious about that. I know Isaiah obviously was. And I think it's funny you say that because, a lot of the time with these in-season guys, I'll say the same thing. I'll be like, well, Dan calls it checking boxes. I know you have a really good Dan impersonation. I'll try to mimic it. I'll be like, well, you got to come in here. You're not doing strength work. So we got to do that. We got to do that stuff. And I know that that's what I tell them. I'm like, look, you're on the court for 3 hours a day. You don't need more on court things. You probably don't even need more plyos. Like you're doing enough of it. And even to the extensive plyo point, like you probably could get away with very low volumes of that, but you're still getting some plyometric contacts like on the court. So it's like, well, what are you not doing right now? Well, you haven't touched a squat in 4 months. Like, and you see like these LeBron memes and stuff like that of his like shitty RDL deadlift thing. And sometimes you'll see these like in-season NFL or NBA guys and they're doing like stability ball, like banded work. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense because you can't do anything else because you're already so far overloaded that yes, it makes sense to just mask any real loading in the weight room because you're already crushed. And I guess, have you seen that too, where guys are just obliterated all the time from the on-court stuff? And it's like you borderline can't even get any work done.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just had a couple sessions with a guy that came back from the CBA just last week. They were on a little break and they've condensed it. The CBA is a little bit unlike, in many ways, it's the most similar league to the NBA, but in a lot of ways, they have a very variable number of games, variable number of when the season starts for a variety of reasons. And he said they were playing as many as 4 games a week. I didn't check if that was an exaggeration or not, but 4 games a week. Yeah. And the coach wants them to train a little bit as well. So what do you even do when it's 4 games a week? In the sport of soccer, you'll sometimes see games where there's 3 games in a 7-day period. Well, regardless of which scenario you're talking about, when the density is that high of maximal intensity work, you're basically just figuring out a way to recover from it. You're not getting better from any kind of training stimulus. The only stimulus that maybe is getting you better is the competition stimulus.
Right.
And so you don't have time or recovery capacity to do any of the actual training, the heavy squats, the plyometrics, the sprinting, whatever that looks like for you. But you just need to kind of recover and reset. It's figuring out where that balance is of how much do I want to risk detraining and what's the recovery benefit or maybe rehabilitative benefit, the therapeutic benefit of doing these lesser intensity kind of glue type things, the things that just hold everything together when you're really going pedal to the metal in those dense competition phases.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I always viewed it, which makes it tough, in our case where it's like, well, the answer is do less. And it's like, well, I'm paying you to make me better. And it's like, that's not a realistic expectation. Like, you're in season, Chief. Okay. You're a volleyball player jumping 6 days a week.
You're paying us to tell you no.
You're paying us to tell you to not do shit or to do like really general work. Like what I found with some guys is you can do some posterior chain work and that you can get away with that, because a lot of the time, like your hips are going to be a little more resistant than like your knee would be if you're squatting or something like that. So yeah, really, really good. Really good stuff there. I did want to ask you about this because I know it's, this person's your pride and joy. They make you happier than anything in the world. And plot twist, it's not me. It's an athlete that you coach that is a performer that I asked you if I'm allowed to ask about. And it's been under the radar for some time. I don't know if you've talked about this person. So first, can you disclose who this person is? And hopefully, it's not me. Can you disclose who it is?
You gave away the story when you said my favorite person. Everyone knew it wasn't you, John. It's it's J. Cole. I worked with J. Cole for about 6 years now. He is what people think he is. He definitely has almost a meme culture surrounding him. People call him humble. People call him a great guy. People call him real. He is all of that. So I'll start off with that. I mean, the dude is just, you wouldn't believe it. He's deep. He's introspective. I would consider him like we've had some of the, most intellectual conversations that I can recall having worked with him. He's hardworking. You realize that the stuff that he does with me is secondary. He's played professional basketball twice now, and maybe playing again. You realize that people do not generally take side quests from their primary career to be a professional in another elite level career, right? So it's not quite like a Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders, right? But in some ways, it's not more impressive athletically, but the two things that he's trying to do are way more divergent than baseball and football. And I think it's safe to say, regardless of whether you're a Cole fan or a hater, that the guy is at least top 15 all time. And some people would put him as a top 5 all time. So he's a GOAT.
Top two. He's my favorite rapper.
Yeah, there we have it.
Right. I got it's Cole and then Kendrick my number 2. So it makes me really happy to hear.
Right. So I'm saying, like, here's a guy who is elite of the elite in his field, and he's still finding time to train for a sport. I mean, the guy loves basketball, and he's one. This is great from the last point. Is in the early days of training him, which is like this start of COVID shutdown. I used to go to UNC and train him because I was the only gym that we could go to at the time. We'd meet at UNC. He'd use their courts, that kind of thing. And we'd go in the weight room at UNC. And it was clear the guy hated the weight room, hated it. I mean, our conversations were kind of awkward. He didn't like the weight room. His favorite exercise was the leg extension. He loved the leg extension, but that was about it. You asked the guy to do, I mean, I'm serious. You asked the guy to do a squat, and he just didn't like it. So then it's as I'll always say, is meet the person where they're at. We for sure did leg extensions, and he's had some knee injuries. He's had some ankle injuries, that kind of thing. But he went from that to realizing I can't even play if I don't work with Mike. So now he won't even play. He won't touch the court as much as he loves it unless he's worked with me for like 2 to 3 weeks continuous. He might shoot around a little bit, but he knows that he will pay the price if he does more than that. So there's a level of discipline and kind of learning, both for me saying, hey, you can't just go from doing nothing to playing, 2 hours of pickup ball, and not pay the price the next day. Now he realized I've got to earn the right to do this thing that I love. So I was telling him for a long time, like, I'm telling you not to do this, not to play. Basically, don't play until you're ready. Because if you try, you're going to do it one time, but then you're not going to play for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's going to flare up that bad. So now he's totally bought in. I don't know that he loves it, but he definitely does it, and he knows that he has to earn his right to hit the court again. And is pretty disciplined in that regards. The guy's 41. We actually share the exact same birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Birthday buddies. And we he wrote a song about our shared birthday, January 28th. And he's disciplined. He's an older guy trying to play professional basketball, or trying to play basketball at the highest level that he can. Kind of gave it up in his earlier years to pursue his pursue rapping and his company Dreamville. So it's rare that you have the opportunity to work with a guy who's like actually a GOAT and trying to do something different. Hardworking guy. And then, even like fitting in all that, the guy's a great dad, great family guy, down to earth, super private. But 6 years, a little bit on and off. Like right now, I haven't seen him for, we chat every now and then, but I haven't seen him for a little while, 2-3 weeks, because of fall off drops
stuff. Yeah, I was I was like, just got some stuff going on right now. I don't know if you're aware.
And he's got a little world tour coming up.
Something
that I won't see him for. Won't see him for a couple months.
On the world tour.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question I actually do have. Have you ever told him, like, you ever see this Isaiah kid? He can really dunk the ball. Does that ever come up in conversation? Oh, yeah.
So,
Isaiah.
That makes me so happy.
There's a couple things. So he doesn't really use social media, but I think he lurks on YouTube and Instagram. And he's definitely seen your videos.
That's terrifying.
He's asked about different protocols. He's talked about knees over toes, guy. He's talked about does this work or does that work? So he's now kind of probably invested enough into it where the algorithm is feeding these things to him. But he's, as I said, the guy's a basketball fiend. For when I first started working with him, he had lost his ability to dunk. He couldn't dunk. And it took about 2 years to regain it where he could do it confidently. And some of it is really just pain related and being healthy enough to do it. But once he was healthy,
he's still dunking at 41. He can still dunk.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good stuff, Mike. Can you dunk?
Not with two hands.
Can you dunk with one hand? That was going to be my follow-up question. I was like, I can't do a windmill. It's like, can you do a one-hander? You could. I think you could. I think you said you dunked a women's ball at one point.
Back in the day, I could dunk. I could dunk if you lobbed it. I could dunk if I could dunk a women's ball. I could, probably permanently jack my SI joint by grabbing the rim with one hand, coming around with the ball in the other hand while this hand slips. My hand slips. My hips roll through, and I land on a curb. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that would be good. I think we should test that out. Okay, so we have one last question. It was really, really interesting. I know Isaiah is probably going to leave this. He's going to be on cloud 9 for probably the rest of the year. Having heard that, so thanks for making his year more than I ever could in 5 minutes. So the follow-up question, and we'll end on this. What is your favorite story about about me interning or mentoring under you that you can share that's, let's say, below rated R? It can't be above rated R.
Okay, so there's honestly a shitload of stories. Anyone that was around Athletic Lab at that time was probably witness to many of them. John was a, believe it or not, more intense character than he is now.
I wouldn't even say it's close to where I was then.
So John shared some of the context of this story in his opening, but I'll just kind of reiterate a little bit. So he trained with me from 14 or 15 years old or something like that. He did an internship at 17, I believe, before we even accepted interns, at an age before we even accepted interns. He wanted to do a back-to-back intern, but I was like, no, John, you should go and do something else, which was, both altruistically was to say, hey, John, go explore other methods where we saw Altus and had a great opportunity there. Selfishly was so that I could get away from him for a little while. Then he comes back, of all things. He comes back and he does the second internship. So John is the first guy at this point, now after 17 years of having Athletic Club, John was the first guy. He was the youngest one to ever complete the internship and the first guy to do it twice. We've now had about 4 people do it twice. Okay, so that's the background.
They're probably your best mentees. That's all I have to say.
So John, my timeline is maybe imprecise here because I am an old man, but so that's the backdrop for John. John took a shitload of pride in being the greatest intern ever. Okay,
that's right.
Did it twice. He was the youngest to complete it. It's almost like, hey, I'm the best at being the unpaid intern. And so we had this guy, Matt Hunter, right?
Oh,
Matt Hunter had worked out and interned at Mike Boyle's Performance Center in Boston. Really big name place, right? Boyle, you guys know Boyle, right? Heard of his name?
Should. Yeah.
Worked out and trained with Eric Cressy, or interned there at Eric Cressy's in the Boston area as well. So those are 2 massive names in the industry. Okay, so he has interned at both of those places, and then he comes and interns for us. And he's running track as well. I think he was something like a Division 2 or 3 high level decathlete.
I think he got second D3 or something like that.
So he's joining the track club. He joins the track club, and I think John is away or at Altus or something like that. And I'm messaging John like, "Hey man, we've got this guy.
He's a stud.
He's a stud.
He's going to give you a run for your money."
This is maybe the best intern we've ever had,
That's right.
And I'm just building this up over time, over months. So John returns now, and Matt is now part of the training group. And John comes in, and they're about to meet for the first time. And Matt is in on this. And so John comes up and he says, I introduce them. I think it's at Davis Drive track where we used to just bogart onto this track. I introduce them, and John's like, "Hey Matt, nice to meet you. I've heard Mike talks about you a lot. I've heard good things," but he's still pretty salty. Behind the scenes, he's kind of pretty salty. And Matt says, on script, he says, "What's your name again? I've never heard of you. Mike's never mentioned you before."
This is like
a dagger.
I can't imagine. You can't imagine the how disarmed I was.
Heartbreak.
My entire life, all I wanted to do was say, John, Mike, to say, John, I'm proud of you. You've really done something with your life. Instead, he says, "I haven't even talked about you in 2 years. I don't even fucking know your name. I don't even know who you are." And I think, one of my favorite stories as well was the me passing out in the weightlifting meet. I think that was
my
probably
second choice.
Yeah,
my
that was a really good one too.
I've seen this video.
Yeah,
So
so have I.
I pass out. I don't remember shit. I'm sitting down in a chair, and Mike's like, so first off, Mike tells me to make a jump that I had no business making. Like, I'd never clean and jerked 100 kilos in my life. I clean and jerk 100 kilos. I'm super excited. Run to the back. I'm like, Mike, what should I jump to? He's like, go to 105. I'm like, Mike, I've never put 95 kilos over my head. I just hit a 5 kilo PR. You think I should go to 105 kilos? He's like, yeah, that was easy. So I go to 105 kilos.
Unbeknownst to you, that was your one opportunity to make me proud, John.
Yeah, well, so I get this thing on my shoulders, and I'm just like, oh, I feel real lightheaded. Like, I'm not feeling good. And I just like nearly pass out. I do like the wave seizure dance move. It was quite the meme in the gym for quite a while amongst all the members. And I sit down and I look at Mike, and I'm like, did I put it over my head? And he was just like, fuck. Do you remember that when I was like, did I get it? He's like, no, you almost died. I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. There's a few other really, really good stories, but this was a ton of fun. I actually really enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys learned a lot from Mike, and you enjoyed getting to hear him speak. This hopefully won't be the last time. Mike, we need a part two. We have a habit of putting people on. Where can people find you on Instagram, YouTube? Where do you share content?
At Mike Young PhD on Instagram is about the only place I'm active now. I have a Athletic Lab Coaching Academy where I've put together a course, the mentorship course that John actually referred to, that he took part in. We turned it into an online course, formalized it, developed a curriculum. Was just speaking to Luigi about it today, who you've met, Luigi Marino, and he was kind of around during that early years of seeing it form and kind of being part of what turned it into what it is today. Kind of reminiscing and being nostalgia about the whiteboard wall. You know, I think we'd have these lectures and just come in and I'd stand up and teach at a whiteboard wall and about whatever everybody wanted to talk about. So Athletic Lab Coaching Academy is where I put out a lot of my work as a formalized course, starting at John's behest and following his guidance, actually, to put out some YouTube shorts and get a little bit back into content creation during the COVID years when I had time to do it. I put out, honestly, some of my best work, I think, about track and field programming, philosophy, methodology, speed and power related, for about a 2-year block, posting almost every day on Instagram. I'm not doing it to that.
Those, go back to 2020 and read the descriptions. You'll see some of the most interesting stuff on a number of things, anything from BBT to cluster sets to EBOMs to. So and I always tell guys, go back, read the descriptions.
I would second that. I've actually bought and taken the course. Highly recommend everybody.
Yeah, it was good.
And then I've gone through all the Instagram post descriptions as well, and you will learn a lot if you do those two things.
And if you want to take it to the next level, go to elitetrack.com. You can see my training journal on there. You guys can steal that information. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. We will catch you guys next time. Ciao. Au revoir.